Here we are. Welcome back. It's nice to see y'all again. I know it's been a while. I've been looking for a way to create content without needing to edit a lot because I'm super busy with a lot of things. But I thought this would be a really good way to do it. Just bust out a quick, just do a draft real quick, and talk about the players and their approximate values and all of that. I'm pretty sure Christian McCaffrey's going to go here with the 101, and I think there's an interesting case that hasn't been made yet, and that's that there's a lot of talk right now about the Panthers and their love for Trey Lance. So if the Panthers end up taking Trey Lance, I don't know how long Teddy Bridgewater will be the starter. I don't know if Teddy Bridgewater is even I don't know if they've even come out this year and said that he is going to be the starter. They picked Dalvin Cook. That was a terrible pick. But the point being that if Trey Lance is his quarterback, it could majorly reduce Christian McCaffrey's receiving floor, but it could raise his rushing floor. Now, with that being said, Christian McCaffrey's had some terrible quarterbacks through his entire career. It's not like Trey Lance is going to be a major step back in whatever role that he plays, but it is... Sorry, I'm thinking about my pick here. I think I go Derrick Henry over Saquon. But I think still you should draft Christian McCaffrey first overall. I think Alvin Kamara at the 1-3 is a reach because I think Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill are going to split the quarterback duties. I know their coach, I'm forgetting his name right now, even though he's a really big deal, has been talking ever since last year and the year before about using two quarterbacks. He took Drew Brees off the field for Taysom Hill, who is a Hall of Fame quarterback. There's no way that he's not going to also take off Jameis Winston. I think it's interesting because last year Teddy Bridgewater was the quarterback and not Jameis Winston when Drew Brees got hurt, because people forget that Drew Brees missed 8 games last year as well, and he didn't lose a single game. He either went 8-0 or 7-1. It was an insane spree. And then he got a big contract deal in Carolina. And obviously things didn't work out this previous year. But I don't think Jameis Winston is some sort of major upgrade for the offense. We've seen their fantasy production under these various different quarterbacks, and it hasn't been something that's appealing. But they've always been a good football team. So with that being said... Travis Kelsey goes at the 1-6. I know I was hating on Travis Kelsey for a long time there, or to start the season. I think I have to flip on that pretty quick because I feel like every draft that I leave Travis Kelsey with are my favorite drafts, or the ones that I feel the most comfortable with. The two hardest positions to fill in fantasy football, unless you're doing super flex, are the tight end position and the running back position. And the tight end position has even less depth because there's only 3 people that are a high tier tight end. Then there's 2 to 3 people after that are a great to a high tier tight end, and then everyone else is just okay to bad. So while running back is also a position that doesn't have a lot of depth, my main point was that the Chiefs were going to add weapons, which will reduce Travis Kelsey's floor. So if you pick Travis Kelsey in the first round, you're going to lose out to the people that are picking Darren Waller and George Kittle in the second round, and they also get a first round running back that's really good. The Chiefs haven't been able to add any weapons, and I don't think they will. If anything, they've lost pieces or have gotten rid of people. There's a good chance that they draft a wide receiver in the draft this year, but I don't think that will have any effect on Kelsey's role in this offense, so it's pretty safe to assume that Kelsey will once again be the tight end 1 this year, which means I feel a lot more comfortable taking him in the first round with an early pick. Now, taking him with the 1-3 The 1-4 I think is a little bit of a reach, but once you get to the 1-5, 1-6, you can fire away on Travis Kelsey. And the positional advantage that he offers you obviously is going to be great, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to be something that's going to, go away during the season, because everybody knows who Travis Kelsey is. I think he's a great trade piece that you can use throughout the rest of the season. So in the first pick, we picked Derrick Henry. I think he's a good season-long prospect, even though he requires a lot of touches. We have Darren Waller here falling to us with Antonio Gibson and A.J. Brown. I love A.J. Brown. I think he's a fantastic wide receiver, but because the tight end position is lacking in depth so much, and George Kittle, Travis Kelsey are already off the board, I feel really happy picking up Darren Waller here at the 2-9, because there is a chance that Darren Waller is able to outproduce George Kittle this year. But that's dependent on the quarterback play that they get. With the San Francisco 49ers trading up to get the 3rd pick in the draft, it's most likely that they're going to get Justin Fields, because all I've heard from the New York Jets so far is that they're interested in Zach Wilson. That's the guy they're going to pick. So even though I don't think that's correct, I think Justin Fields is the better quarterback. That's who they value. That's who they're going to pick. So if that ends up being the case, I think the 49ers are going to get a steal in Justin Fields, but I don't think he's going to be able to be necessarily extremely productive in his first season as a quarterback. Keenan Allen and Calvin Ridley are my 2 choices here, or Najee Harris, actually. I think I'm gonna take Najee. So this is before the draft. That's why he doesn't have a landing spot listed. But I don't think that Najee Harris is going to go into a situation that is bad, because he's a prototypical 3-down back. There's not, even if he's used in a committee, he's going to be efficient in that committee. He's going to be an Aaron Jones type. There's not a single way that he can't be used. And the running back depth is starting to run out. Miles Sanders is another good option, but I think Josh Jacobs is going to be pretty bad this year. Now, there's a chance that he becomes extremely productive on his lower amount of touches, but we saw last year that they were willing to take Josh Jacobs out for the entire 3rd drive of every game so that they could play Devontae Booker. And Devontae Booker is pretty good. He's okay, but he's like an Alexander Madison tier. He's not an actual starter, and he's not going to ever be billed that anywhere in his entire career. And Josh Jacobs was used in a committee in college at Alabama. He got a lot of receiving work there. He gets no receiving work in Las Vegas. They bring in Kenyon Drake, who, although he's not a fantastic running back, he's definitely a bigger name than Devontae Booker, which leads us to believe that he's going to get more touches. So I just feel really bad about Josh Jacobs, so I wouldn't take him over Najee. I love the wide receivers here, but since this is half PPR and not PPR, I think it's really important, point per reception. I think it's really important to nab the running backs, because the gap between the highest producing wide receivers and the middle producing wide receivers isn't as large as it would be in PPR. And it also means that running backs have more value. The less points that you get per reception, the more valuable the running back position is going to get. Although there are some running backs that are able to amount a large amount of receptions, like Christian McCaffrey, it still makes it so that the wide receiver position is able to put up 30 and 40 points, which is something only the running back position and the quarterback position can really do in half PPR and standard scoring formats. So that's why I think it's important to grab the running backs. I think they have the highest ceiling, and you can nab a bunch of wide receivers in the mid to late rounds that will average out, I believe, the production of a higher end wide receiver. So that's why I invested in running back and tight end. Like I said, those are the hardest positions to cover. I think the quarterback depth is basically infinite. You can, in this draft, it's basically super flex because it's a season-long best ball format. So you have to have at least three quarterbacks if you want to be able to compete across the entire season. Which means that you have to, if you have to pick more quarterbacks, the quarterback position has more value than it would be if you only had to pick one. But still, even with people picking multiple quarterbacks, I think you can wait until like the 14th and 15th round to pick up your quarterback and still be really happy. Now, I struggle with that. You will find quarterbacks that fall to you at a value, like here, Patrick Mahomes falling later than he normally does. So it's hard to keep a level enough head to stick to that strategy. I don't like a lot of the players here. I don't like basically any of them. And that's what makes me want to lean towards Josh Allen here. But I feel like, oh my God, this is awful. I took Julio. I struggle. Here's why I struggle with this pick. I think Julio and Adam Thielen are like league losing picks, and so is David Montgomery, because their floor is that they just don't play the season, or that they play at an extremely low production. Julio Jones tore his hamstring like 3 or 4 times last year, and he's 30 years old. Adam Thielen is going to see less work because they just drafted one of the best wide receivers to ever grace the field in Justin Jefferson. So obviously Adam Thielen has been the red zone threat historically, but we don't know how Justin Jefferson is going to be used having an actual offseason, because last year he wasn't able to prepare. In his own words, he said that he wasn't able to comprehend the plays because they were all on a tablet and they couldn't do walkthroughs because of COVID, which makes sense to me. Like if you're a football player, it makes more sense when you're actually on the football field than just looking at things from a top-down 2D perspective. Now, obviously that's not the case for everyone. There are some people that are going to be able to comprehend that information at a whatever sort of rate, but he's a football player. Like, he's not used to understanding the plays. Like, whatever. Point is, he's got an entire offseason. It was his first year in the NFL. They put him in the X role. He was going against corners that were way above his pay grade. He was dominating after the catch. I don't know why I have to defend Justin Jefferson here. Adam Thielen is going to lose his role eventually, even if it's not this year. It's gonna be a slow process. That's why he's a league losing pick. Not that he's guaranteed to make you lose your league, but since he has that floor, I'm hesitant to draft him in the first place. I liked Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, a lot of the quarterbacks. There's sort of a tier break in their production, which made it a valuable and an enticing pick for me to make. But at the end of the day, I sort of wanted to. I know there's also a chance that Julio Jones and Adam Thielen don't lose their roles and are able to produce at their historic levels, because they're both really good wide receivers and have had great careers. So I wanted to make sure that I could grab at least one wide receiver. I think, especially early the season, like in the first month of the season, Julio Jones will probably be pretty good. So I think in a actual fantasy football format, Julio Jones might be an even better pick than in the best ball format, because you can have him play well for that first week or that first month where he's fit. He doesn't have the wear and tear the entire season. He just had the whole offseason to recover from these hamstring injuries, and then trade him off to someone else after those first 4 or 5 games where he plays pretty well, and get a mid-tier running back, just one of the rookie running backs, something, figuring a way to get Kenneth Gainwell and another wide receiver or something like that, and really being able to push his first month of production into players that will produce for you throughout the entire season. But he's on our team in a best ball format. We can't get rid of him. I think it's important to have some production from the wide receiver position, some players that have a high ceiling, because we basically faded the wide receiver because our first 3 picks weren't the wide receiver. We didn't have a wide receiver in our first 3 picks. Again, I think quarterback is basically infinite in its depth, so that's why I was reluctant to take Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, even though there is a tier break, even though they will outproduce the people that will be drafted after them. There is not as much of a tier break between the quarterbacks that will go now and the quarterbacks that I will be able to grab in the 15th and 16th round. So that's why, instead of being able to beat out the teams that take a quarterback early by picking another quarterback that I think is good, I want to have the best depth in every position other than quarterback, and then cover it by grabbing a bunch of late round options who will each be able to elevate each other's floor. And what I mean by that is, if you have 4 quarterbacks and one of them gets 0, one of them gets 10, one of them gets 15, and one of them gets 20, that's awful, but you still got a 20 for that week since it's best ball. So you just want the idea there being that, okay, you pick 2 quarterbacks in the very early rounds, maybe it's a Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, they will have a ceiling of 40 points, 35 points each week, but how much is it really going to matter in the end that you're outproducing one position by 15 points if I can outproduce you at other positions by a larger amount? That's the thought process. Justin Herbert is definitely really good here. There's been some trade talks about DJ Chark, but that none of them have manifested yet. So I like the pick here. He might be Trevor Lawrence's number 1, which means that if everything goes to plan, we have 3 wide receivers. Here, let me actually throw up the draft board here. We have Julio Jones, Deontay Johnson, and DJ Chark as our wide receivers. And we have Derrick Henry and Najee Harris as our running backs, which actually, they kind of have a similar running style. Excuse me, which is sort of an interesting thing. And we have Darren Waller as our tight end. I think that's an okay start. It's not my favorite. I guess the thing that I like the least is Julio Jones. It really hurts seeing that, Cooper Kupp is probably a better pick than Julio Jones in my opinion, and it really hurts that Julio Jones went only 4 picks earlier. I think there's a definite gap in value between DJ Moore, Robert Woods, and then Julio Jones. Kenny Gallaudet is a wide receiver that has a lot of talent, but my worry for him is that he doesn't get a lot of separation. Matthew Stafford basically fit every ball right into his hands on the end of every one of his routes, and I don't know if Daniel Jones has that ability or that the skill set to be able to do that. He doesn't. When he hits his wide receivers, normally it's because they won their route and were able to get a large amount of separation. It's not because he was able to throw them open. So that's a little bit of a concern, and that's why I skew away from taking Gallaudet there, even though, again, he is a very talented wide receiver. So we still have some quarterbacks here that are great, namely Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if Deshaun Watson is going to play this season, so maybe you could take Deshaun Watson if you want to, but in the end, I don't think that will end up working for you all that well. So really, the thought process here is between Russell Wilson and someone else. I think the pick is just Russell Wilson here. It's lagging. Well, let's see who we ended up picking, because it's not letting me. I got Odell. That's wonderful. Thank you. So that's whatever. We'll probably get another quarterback. The reason why that sucks, God, I hate this lag. It's really just driving me crazy. The reason why that sucks is because Aaron Rodgers is most likely going to Russell Wilson is going to outproduce any quarterback that goes after him. And so the thought process of having a low floor by picking a lot of quarterbacks falls by the wayside if you're able to secure a Russell Wilson in the 7th round, because he can be your ceiling, and then you need less quarterbacks to gather your floor, which means you can invest more in other positions later. So I think taking a wide receiver there is a flawed thought process, because the idea is I'm going to improve my depth at other positions before I grab a quarterback, because the quarterback position is so deep. But because Russell Wilson is so much better than all the other quarterbacks, the effect, since by taking Russell Wilson, you're able to collect less quarterbacks, or you don't need to draft as many, you are essentially improving other positions. So there's no need to grab the wide receiver there. So that's why I'm frustrated. But really, it's just a game. It's no big deal. And I'll be able to outdraft everybody else in the end, like, no matter what. So you just have to recollect yourself, look back at the draft board and see who's going. I still feel really happy with getting Darren Waller at the 2.9. That's not the latest that I've seen him go, but it's basically like what you're looking for if you're getting Darren Waller. You can see the tier gap as well between Darren Waller and the next tight end taken. There's literally a 3-round difference between the highest 3 tight ends and everybody else. So by taking the very last tight end, I was able to collect. There's basically like a 3-round difference of value that I was able to collect in one pick, and that's why grabbing a tight end in the first or second round is very valuable, because once you miss those 3 guys, you're basically done. Now, I am a late tight end person. I'm a late quarterback person by nature. So there's a lot of tight ends that go late that I think have a lot of value, that being Dallas Goedert, Jonnu Smith, Blake Jarwin, or Dalton Schultz, I think are all great. Maybe even Christopher Herndon as an extremely late tight end that might provide some value. But at the end of the day, they're not going to be able to reach the ceiling that Darren Waller, George Kittle, and Travis Kelsey have, and that's why they're such a valuable pick. Saquon might have a better season than Derrick Henry, which might make him a worse process pick because Derrick Henry is so workload dependent. But at the end of the day, he's going to get that workload. Ronald Jones is still there. They just signed the other dude, Leonard Fournette. Oh, God. This is gross. I guess I take Ronald Jones here. There's not really anyone that's better. Again, I could take Deshaun Watson on the idea that maybe he plays this season, but out of everything that I've read, it looks bad. So probably not a good process pick to pick someone that's not going to play, because they're not going to get you any points. But anyways, the reason why that was so tough is because the only people that were left in this tier that I could see were bad running backs and tight ends. Now, Michael Pittman and Devontae Parker, probably better picks. But Ronald Jones could still be a serviceable running back. He definitely ran for over 100 yards while competing with Leonard Fournette. Has that capability. He's the first and second down back. He's the guy who's going to run between the tackles. So he hasn't lost his job. He should be an okay process pick. Irv Smith, Tyler Higbee, Logan Thomas. Mostly Irv Smith and Tyler Higbee. Basically mostly Irv Smith, actually. I love Irv Smith this year. The Vikings have been using Kyle Rudolph to death. He's not all that talented. He's a pretty good blocker. He can make fantastic fourth quarter end zone catches. But he's not consistently productive. Irv Smith was fantastic for Alabama. He's a different sort of tight end. He's got speed. He can line out wide, sort of like Kyle Pitts, but he's not as athletic. But still, the Vikings utilize their tight ends. They're going to utilize both Tyler Conklin and Irv Smith. And I think Irv is going to get an extreme increase in production this year. Michael Pittman's probably going to be my pick here over Devontae Parker because they grabbed Will Fuller, and they're probably going to grab either Devonta Smith or Jamar Chase in the draft this year, adding another wide receiver to the picture, which decreases my confidence in Devontae Parker. But Michael Pittman now has a better quarterback in Carson Wentz. Not that it's hard to be better than Phillip Rivers at the tail end of his career, but Carson Wentz will definitely play better for the Indianapolis Colts than he did for the Eagles because he has an offensive line. He has a running back that can take the pressure off of him, which means there won't be as many blitzes, which means it won't matter as much that he holds onto the ball for too long. And they literally have the best offensive line in the league, which is good since he's kind of the statue quarterback. So if we're looking at the board here, I think we have some pretty good wide receivers. Julio Jones and Odell are the questionable ones to me, but still they should be able, like I've said before, to fill out each other's floors. The running back position is fine because the way the draft shook out, I'm trying to only fill the running back slots because there's an extra flex spot, which can be a wide receiver, running back, or maybe even a tight end. But since I wasn't able to grab a large quantity of running backs, but ones that are good, I want to make sure that I'm only trying to fill those two spots, the two running back slots, and then the flex spot will be filled out by my wide receivers. So that's why I'm investing a little bit more in wide receivers here, and I haven't really taken a quarterback, because as you've seen, there hasn't actually been a quarterback that's gone since Russell Wilson. That hurts, man. That was like the Darren Waller tier break of before, and that's sort of what I was calling out. There's a lot of really good value in the 7th round. LaVisca, Brandon Cooks, TJ Hawkinson, Juju, Debo, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Curtis Samuel, Jalen Hurts. Some of those names are like fantastic, like actual league winners. I think AJ Dillon goes too late. And the reason I say that is people sort of assume that he's going to be backing up Aaron Jones. And I think they're going to be splitting that backfield. Now, the counterpoint has always been, but how is he going to replace the Jamal Williams role when he can't catch? Well, he's not going to replace the Jamal Williams role. He's going to replace the Aaron Jones role. What people don't realize, they don't watch the Packers enough to realize that Aaron Jones is not a workhorse back. He's always been in a committee, and he's always been used very sparsely. He's just a fantastic running back who's able to get a lot of production out of very little work. It's not until the playoffs that they really only used Aaron Jones, and A.J. Dillon still saw work in the playoffs. So I think A.J. Dillon is going to be not a first and second down role, but maybe a close to the goal line every once in a while, a change of pace back, absolutely. And the scary thing is that if I'm wrong and everyone else is wrong, it's that A.J. Dillon is the first and second down back, and Aaron Jones is the change of pace, third down when we're behind receiving back, then A.J. Dillon's stock is actually a lot higher than going at the 8-2. But a lot of these, I talk about how the running back position goes out quite quickly, and that is true. But I still think that there is a lot of value late in running backs, and that's more specific to this format. Now, the reason I say that is, unless you're doing a fantasy league where you have 3 wide receiver slots, like this is like this league is, the wide receiver position has not that much value, even if it's a PPR league, because you can have hold on, sorry, I'm just gonna take Tom Brady here probably over Mike Williams. So hold on, let me finish the previous thought. So since you only have to fill out 2 wide receivers instead of 3 wide receivers, that doesn't seem like it's all that much more, but it's actually a world of difference in the amount that you actually need to have on your roster to fill out those spots. So you can just invest in 2 high-end wide receivers or just 1 high-end. The way that I approach the 3 wide receiver slots is that I want to fill out 2 of those wide receiver slots with 2 wide receivers that I feel extremely confident in. And then the 3rd slot will basically be its own flex spot, where anybody that has a high ceiling will be able to get in every once in a while or have their week in which they become the wide receiver 3, but I'm not necessarily looking for a steady wide receiver 3. So when there's only 2 wide receivers, the way I think about it is, okay, I can either have 2 great wide receivers and have a large amount of positional depth over everyone else, or I can pick 1 great wide receiver and just try to flex out that spot and not invest a lot of resources into it. Because wide receivers have a lot of volatility. They have an extremely low floor. So you never know really how it's going to fold for you. Now, again, I keep talking about Deshaun Watson because he keeps falling and falling and falling. Deshaun Watson in the 11th is a lot more tempting even if he doesn't play. Just from a pure value standpoint, like that could win you the entire tournament if you pick Deshaun Watson and everything blows over. But I still don't feel like it's the right pick, as silly as that is. I think you should feel good about your picks, and if you don't feel good about your pick, it's a sign that you made an incorrect pick. So I'm going to take Antonio Brown here. I think with another season of being a part of the team, and with Mike Evans' issues and staying healthy, Antonio Brown could see an increased workload. He also is friends with Tom Brady off the field, stayed and lived with him for quite a while. I think he's dedicated to being able to get back into the league, and he's not as old as people think he is. Now, with that being said, he has his own off-the-field issues. He was out of the league for a little bit, and I think there is some truth to the idea that once you leave or quit mentally, there's no way to get it back. Or maybe Antonio Brown has been working ever since he got out of the league to try to get back in the league. But what I think is there's a moment of realization when he's having all of this personal drama. I don't think he's working out and looking at routes and trying to, he's falling behind the competition in moments like that. So I know Antonio Brown isn't going to be the Steelers' Antonio Brown of old, and his ceiling isn't as high as a wide receiver that would be younger than him. Maybe like a Gabriel Davis, but they have so many targets over there that's kind of unlikely for me to believe. Darnell Mooney is probably a better idea of somebody that has a high floor. We still have the wide receivers position so far is pretty good. We've filled it out all right. We have enough wide receivers to the point where we don't have to draft another one for the rest of the draft. And we could be able to fill out the 4 slots that we need to. We don't necessarily need to pick a high-end tight end to fill out the second tight end slot, but we will need another tight end. Excuse me, I'm not used to talking for 30 minutes straight. We will need another tight end eventually because Darren Waller will have a bye week, because everybody has a bye week, and you don't want to score 0 points on that bye week. Same thing with Tom. I think Tom went super late. He doesn't have the rushing floor. He doesn't run the ball, so it's really hard to again project him as having a fantastic season. But last season he was one of only 12 quarterbacks that didn't have a rushing floor to make it into the top 12. So, and honestly, Tom Brady, I know a lot of people are going to say he's the greatest quarterback of all time. He's the GOAT and whatever. He wasn't playing all that great last year. He played better than he did in New England, but he also had a better line, better weapons, and a better defense. So the way that I perceive it and what I see from a lot of the games is he does throw the ball deep, but half the time those are misfires and overthrows, and a lot of the actual production comes from slants and short throws where his targets and his weapons actually do a majority of the work after the catch. So all that is to say that I'm not a Tom Brady lover, but I'm not necessarily a Tom Brady hater, and getting him in the 10th round is a pretty big value because last year he was in the top 12. He was literally a quarterback one. So if that's true this year, and I get it, if Tom Brady outproduces the quarterbacks that are picked ahead of him, that's the whole reason you go late QB. Quarterbacks are impossible to predict. You never know who's going to get hurt. You never know who's going to have an off season. You never know who's going to have their lineman, their wide receiver, or their whatever. So that's why I don't try to invest all that heavily in it, because I think there are other positions that are harder to fill that can give you a better advantage in the long term. And I think that, especially in a fantasy football league, if you pick a quarterback with your last pick, you literally pick a kicker and a defense before you pick your quarterback, that is one of my favorite strategies, because there's nobody in those last rounds, because they've already picked their quarterback, that's going to pick another quarterback. And let me pick Kirk Cousins here, which I think is another fantastic value. I talked about Jonnu Smith earlier. I'm a big fan of him. And Baker Mayfield as well is another fantastic option. But I'm going to take Kirk here. because, again, I like Irv Smith. I like Justin Jefferson. I think Kirk is going to have a lot of opportunity to get that ball out. What was I just talking about? I think that's the first time I just forgot about what I was talking about. Oh, quarterbacks and their production? I'm not sure. Jonnu Smith should have a great role in New England. People thought his stock fell as soon as they grabbed Hunter Henry. And you definitely never should take Hunter Henry before you take Jonnu Smith. That's an awful pick. But Jonnu Smith is the deep threat. He's the Jimmy Graham role. He's the target. The reason they got Hunter Henry is because Jonnu Smith can't block. So they needed a tight end that could block. Hunter Henry's a high-end blocking tight end. He's not necessarily the best after the catch. I would compare him more to a Jason Witten. So if you think about it, if you're getting a Jason Witten and a Jimmy Graham's going to be the one that's better for fantasy. Like, Hunter Henry's role on the team is purely for football. It's not for his ability to catch the ball. So until they add, God, I wanted Jonnu Smith so bad. Until they add points for blocking in fantasy football, Hunter Henry will not be a very valuable pick. With Jonnu Smith gone, with Irv Smith gone, I think that's sort of the last bit of high-end, late-round tight ends. So I really don't want to invest all that highly in another tight end. I remember what I was talking about before, so I'm going to get on to that. Dang it! I wanted Baker Mayfield so bad. I wanted him so bad. I'm guessing I'm taking Tua. Let me go on a small rant on Tua before I return to my previous topic, because I do remember what I was talking about. I think Tua is underrated. They're adding all these weapons. Tua to me is sort of the Josh Allen of this year because he was inaccurate. And actually, if you pace out his production, I think he got 140 points, fantasy points, over 8 games. If you go over that across the entire season, that's about 280. The average for a quarterback is 300. So Tua didn't even play bad last year. He just wasn't flashy. They're going to add a wide receiver. They already added Will Fuller. So Tua's upside in the receiving game is only higher. So I don't understand why people are hating on Tua so much. But my previous point of taking a quarterback very late in fantasy football, in the 14th and 15th rounds of your fantasy league, people are going to pick defenses and kickers or wide receivers or running backs. Nobody picks a quarterback. After like the 13th round, the last quarterback has been taken. So there's like no reason to pick a quarterback when everybody else is picking a defense. So the idea of picking a defense with the 13th and 14th pick and then saving the quarterback for my last pick in a normal fantasy league is that I'm able to grab a high-end defense. That's basically all I care about. The kicker, I don't really care. And I'm able to get a positional advantage and then grab a quarterback while everyone else after me. After I take the defense, everybody takes a defense. After I take a kicker, everybody takes a kicker. So there's no reason to take a quarterback and then have everybody else take a defense and then you get a worse defense. If you want, you can take a kicker or you can take a quarterback before you take your kicker. But the reason I take the kicker first is because, again, nobody's going to pick a quarterback and everybody's going to pick a kicker. So that's so hard to say. So I would rather have a kicker that is consistent and one that I wouldn't have to stream across the season than just pick a quarterback when no one's picking quarterback. So that's the value of picking a quarterback late. It allows you to fill out every other position and then just stream the quarterback position. And streaming is where you go to the waiver wire and grab any quarterback that has a good matchup. And you only do that if you don't hit on your quarterback. So the idea being, like, all right, if you go pick a quarterback with your last pick and they're fantastic, obviously you're set. But if they get hurt or they just aren't playing well, like they're just a bad option at quarterback, then you just look at whoever's playing the worst defense and you pick them up. And that's not a losing strategy at all. You could take that to the bank. You can win your championship streaming a quarterback every time. And one of the advantages, especially early on in the season, is that most people don't have the mindset yet to stream their quarterback because they picked a quarterback early. They like their option. Later on in the season, at midseason, later in the season, a lot more people will be streaming quarterback because people get injured, whatever. But if you get there early, if you're one of the first people that are streaming quarterbacks, then you'll be able to find the best quarterback that's left on the waiver wire before other people do. So that's a lot of the reason why I think taking a quarterback late, especially in fantasy football, is extremely valuable. Another reason is that the quarterback position is so deep, especially in a 1 QB league, that if you think about it, if you're in a 1 QB league and it's a 10-person league, right? Your worst possible outcome, if everybody takes one quarterback, is that you get the 10th best quarterback there. So what's the point of taking the 10th best quarterback in the 13th round or the 12th round or whatever? Even if you're in a 12-person league, then you're getting the 12th best. Like, there's still... What's the difference between the 8th best quarterback and the 12th best quarterback? There's not one. You only really care about the top 5. Those are the people that really set the standard statistically. So in a format like this, where it's 12 people and it's superflex, so people are taking multiple quarterbacks, I still think that you're able to find value with quarterbacks late that are able to cover for each other's floor. I said that a lot today. Blake Jarwin, Cole Kmet, I like both of them. I mean, I'm a Dallas fan, so maybe this is a homer pick. But I think because it's Dak Prescott, you want Blake Jarwin. Now, Cole Kmet is pretty good. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't know how good Cole Kmet actually is as a tight end. But I know that last year, Jimmy Graham got a lot of production for the Chicago Bears. So if Cole Kmet is able to go into that role, even though he is quite young, he should have decent value for a tight end that goes in the 15th round. But if Blake Jarwin is the tight end 1 in Dallas on a mostly passing offense, then he's also a fantastic value in the 14th round. Now, I've heard about Dalton Schultz taking over for Blake Jarwin. I don't think that's necessarily set in stone. I think the Cowboys are just going to let them both play and see who plays better during the season. So I think Dalton Schultz is another good... I think Dalton Schultz and Christopher Herndon are the latest tight ends that I think have any chance to produce on the season. Anyone that goes after that just feels too gross to even consider. I don't want Dan Arnold on my team. But yeah, Cole Kmet could see some value. I like Russell Gage and Terrence Marshall here as well. I think this is the last round, right? Last pick? No, it goes into 18. Okay. I think we're doing fine in the quarterback department. It's fine in the tight end department. Maybe we just need running backs and wide receivers here. I don't really see a huge reason to take Cole Kmet because his floor is so low and we already have Blake Jarwin and Darren Waller. So I guess it's between... rookie wide receivers don't really produce unless they're taking extremely high. Terrence Marshall's a second round projected wide receiver, so he could see some value. But I would project him into the 70, 80 point range, whereas Russell Gage with Julio Jones, if Julio Jones lowers in his production over this year, it should go to Russell Gage. So I like Russell Gage here more because it sort of insulates the Julio Jones picks from before. Oh, sorry, I was cracking my hand. I guess our weakest position here is running back then. If we're looking at the leftover running back values, there's not a lot. Tyree Cohen's the reason I feel like David Montgomery's a little bit overvalued. People say that David Montgomery got ahead of steam at the end of the season. He was able to figure out the offense or whatever, blah, 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 blah. The actual answer is that Tariq Cohen got hurt, and he's the receiving option, so David Montgomery got all the receiving work and basically all of the rushing work on the team. I mean, they literally put Cordero Patterson in the backfield, and he's a wide receiver. I mean, New England used him as a running back, but that's because they also didn't have any running backs. Cordero Patterson isn't a running back. He doesn't have the body type for it. He doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have the power. He's awful as a running back. It's an awful idea. So David Montgomery was the only person that could carry the ball that was left in Chicago. With Tyree Cohen coming back, he's not a fantastic running back. He's not the best person to ever grace the planet, but he's competition. He takes work from David Montgomery, which means we're more likely to see David Montgomery at the beginning of the season than at the end of the season. It's also important to remember their offensive line is terrible. They haven't done anything to improve it. At this point, they would have to grab a rookie lineman And sure, sometimes they do fine. I mean, Tristan Wirth with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was able to go all the way to the Super Bowl and win it, blocking for Tom Brady. But it's not it's not a viable option to expect a rookie lineman to be able to work in their first season. It's just not the NFL standard. They're going to get beat by men who have been doing this and are better than them at this point in their career. That's not obviously that's not always the case. There are phenomenon of offensive linemen that are just, Hall of Famers or whatever. But as a test case, as like the general rule, most offensive linemen need a couple of years before they can actually stop people from sacking their quarterback. So I'm worried about the Bears' offensive line because even if they add a rookie option, I don't know how well they'll be able to block for Andy Dalton or David Montgomery. So with all that being said, Tyree Cohen might be a better dump-off option if there's going to be more pressure. But honestly, the running backs here all are just gross. I don't like Kylan Hill is the highest upside. And I really honestly I don't know how I feel about Kylan Hill. I love Anthony Firkser, by the way. I guess the thing about tight ends is you shouldn't fret too much if you don't want to get one of the top 3 tight ends, because there are so many late round values. Anthony Firkser is going to take over for Jonnu Smith. He's the tight end 1 in Tennessee, as I understand it. So getting him in the 16th round, which for most fantasy drafts would mean he would have gone undrafted, is crazy. Adam Trautman is another one of those options. It's either Tyree Cohen or Bryan Edwards here. I guess I take Cohen just because of the positional need. I'm expecting 150 points, maybe 130 out of Tyree Cohen. But he's obviously not going to be fantastic. He's just there to basically be a depth piece, make sure that I have a running back there in every single week. And hopefully we can get Bryan Edwards here, because there's basically a tier gap between him and everyone else when it comes to upside. He was a rookie that was drafted last year. He got a very small amount of work, but the Las Vegas is a mess, and Bryan Edwards is very talented. The reason I say they're a mess, obviously I talked about Josh Jacobs earlier and him competing with Drake. We also have Darren Waller on our team, who's their tight end, basically their number 1 receiving option. They have Henry Ruggs, who's their speed guy, they're the person who's going to beat people down the field. They have what's his name? Hunter Renfrow. He's a possession wide receiver. He's kind of an on the numbers guy. And then we have Bryan Edwards, who's kind of the X. So I expect Bryan Edwards to elevate somewhere, but obviously not for my team because they sniped me. I think Jared Goff is the pick. Or excuse me, not Jared Goff. Kylan Hill is the pick here because he just has the highest upside. We don't really know what his potential is or where he's going to get drafted or any of that. This isn't a fantastic rookie running back class. There's only 5 running backs that I care about. That being Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, and Kenneth Gainwell. Ramondre Stevenson is like a 6th, but it's sort of like on his touchdown upside and equity alone. Like, I don't expect him to take over the entire workload for a team. I expect him to be a part of a committee that his role is like near the end zone, because he can't run left to right, but he can run straight forward, and he's really good at that. He weighed in at a lot less than he was listed at while he was playing, and looking back at his film now, I can kind of see that maybe they lied and not that he lost weight. He doesn't look 240. Like, when I saw him before, he looked 240. And now that I look at him now, I see how big his pads are, especially around his chest. And I'm like realizing, well, maybe he was 220 the whole time. Maybe he was around 230. So the idea being there that maybe his power wasn't generated from his weight and he lost a bunch of weight. Maybe he's just a powerful running back that's able to get into the end zone. I think I've said this before on a video that I didn't produce. No, I can't say it. Someone said it after me, and I'm mad about it. But I basically comped him to a Jordan Howard, because that's how I understand him. He's not going to be somebody that runs on the 20, on the 30 or whatever. But when they get to the red zone and they need a touchdown and it's first down, because there's so many coaches in the league that don't want to finesse or think their way into the end zone. They just bring out the heavy set. They bring out their linemen, and they're like, we're going to out-muscle you. We're going to out-tough you. We're going to beat you up on the line of scrimmage, and we're going to push you in the end zone. We're going to run it down your throat. You know we're going to run it. And that's what we're going to do. And Ramondre Stevenson fits that skill set. He's somebody that's hard to tackle, powerful, can get you 2 yards. So I think there's a lot of people in the NFL that see value in Stevenson. So if he goes like in the 4th round, then I would love the amount of Ramondre Stevenson shares that I have. But as of right now, I'm a little bit worried because from all the talk that I've heard, it seems like nobody likes him. And I've had that before. Nobody really liked James Robinson a month ago when I made the video on James Robinson. Everybody was saying he's terrible and he's going to get replaced and they're going to add another option. He's going to get phased out. And I think I was basically the only person out there that was saying James Robinson has value and he will continue to have value. And look, they add Duke Johnson or whoever it was, Carlos Hyde, and now James Robinson ADP is rising. It's like there's a process to this, but anyways, I don't even remember what I'm talking about. Oh, Ramondre Stevenson. Ramondre Stevenson's a worse player than James Robinson, so I don't want to stick my flag on Ramondre Stevenson, but I do think that there is a little bit more value than other people think that there is. Now, since we grabbed 2 running backs, I don't think we need another tight end or another quarterback. I really like Van Jefferson here. I'm a huge Matthew Stafford fan, and I think his landing spot in LA is fantastic. So, I think with whatever, Josh Reynolds getting kicked out, Van Jefferson will take over the wide receiver 3 role, which could have substantial value since Matthew Stafford's an actual quarterback, unlike Jared Goff. Man, this person keeps smiting. Is this the person that sniped me before? This is a tough day. This is a hard day. Oh, God. Whatever. Hunter Renfrow. I'm not taking him because I like Hunter Renfrow. Oh, no. Don't type me out. Don't type me out. God, that was so close. I'm not taking Hunter Renfrow because I like Hunter Renfrow. I'm taking him because we have... Did I take that other... Oh. I didn't grab Bryan Edwards. He snipes me. The thought process there was that if I had Darren Waller, Bryan Edwards, and Hunter Renfrow, that I would have enough of the targets of the Las Vegas offense that its wackiness wouldn't really affect me. But since I don't like the pick nearly as much. I'd probably rather have Amon-Ra St. Brown, Traquan Smith, Tyler, basically anybody that wasn't a running back, because the running backs suck. Hello. Here's the draft. We had some okay quarterbacks. Tom Brady, Kirk Cousins, Tua. Those are like 23, 25 point guys. For the running backs, we had Derrick Henry, Najee Harris, Ronald Jones, Tariq Cohen, and Kylan Hill. These are the 2 guys that really are the names that you should care about. Ronald Jones might see occasional production, and Tariq Cohen and Kylan Hill are kind of boom-bust options. For wide receivers, there's a lot of them. There's no real rhyme or reason to go through all of them, but I do like the Russell Gage, Julio Jones stack. I think Deontay Johnson is severely underrated, especially with Chase Claypool having his own bar fights. I understand that Chase Claypool had a fantastic rookie season. I think that Deontay Johnson is the better wide receiver. He was the one that was drafted to replace Antonio Brown. He does have a ball dropping problem, but I don't think that we'll see how that continues from one year into the next. But as of right now, Chase Claypool seems like the more volatile option. DJ Chark could be the wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville, which is pretty valuable. Michael Pittman, the same. Obviously, they gave T.Y. Hilton a $10 million contract to play this year. But He's old. He's probably not. They didn't pay him $10 million. Normally, when a team pays somebody $10 million, is because they're going to produce. This seemed more like a, hey, thanks for all that you've done for our franchise sort of thing, which is rare in the NFL, but it's the impression that I've got from the interviews that I've seen. So I don't think that T.Y. Hilton may start as the one, but he probably won't end the season as the wide receiver one in Indianapolis. Odell is trouble, just like Julio, because he has his own set of hamstring issues. We don't know if he'll ever return to the player that he has been up to this point. And I'm pretty sure he was auto-picked, so that's whatever. But at least we have a lot of high upside wide receivers. And Hunter Renfrow. And then for tight ends, I'm really happy about getting Darren Waller. And Blake Jarwin's a fine tertiary option. I'm sure he won't make it into the lineup all that much, but I'm still kind of happy that he's there. So all in all, I feel all right about this draft. I feel like this is like a C+, B- draft. Just because there could have been more depth in the running back position, could have had more options here. Could have had a quarterback, Russell Wilson, instead of Odell, to increase the ceiling on the quarterbacks here. And I think a lot of these guys have low floors and high ceilings, so I would have liked some people that were more stable in the wide receiver position. So I think that's what I would need to improve to get this from a B- or C+ to an A. But all in all, it's an okay draft. I hope you learned something. It was definitely, I ranted for a long time, but I hope you felt the love in it, because there was so much of it in there. As you can see in the left, I've done quite a bit of drafts. This is how I have fun. This is how I relax, and it teaches me a lot about next season and which assets or players are valuable. So that's what factors into a lot of this analysis, is all these drafts that I've done. But at the end of the day, the hope here was to be able to show you a sneak peek into next season, how drafts can be approached, talking about the early values of players before we even get into the draft season, even how to value some of these rookies, right? The value of a rookie is extremely dependent on their draft position, and their landing spot. So it's definitely more difficult to understand or to pick the correct rookies when they don't have landing spots and we don't know when they're going to get drafted. But still, there's some process to be able to understand, hey, like Najee Harris is definitely still worth a 3rd or 4th round pick. So that's it. If you have any questions about next season, draft strategy, anything like that, you can always send an email to KickTossCatch@gmail.com. There's also a Discord that you can join for free. I answer everybody's questions. I've done that for, 5 months now? Yeah. If you're having a great day, I hope it gets better, and somebody cares about you, and their name is Malik Akintola. Peace. Have a blessed Monday. I hope I don't know if this is gonna come out on Monday. Take care of yourself. Feel good about yourself, and really recognize that there's no one out there that has the talents that you do. Everybody out there is special. Everybody out there has talent. So lean into it. Be your best self. And kick, toss, catch.